What if the thing that you are calling parental stress is actually unresolved pain asking for your attention? What if the moments that trigger you most with your kids are not just about their behavior, but about the parts of you that never felt safe or seen or supported in the first place? Because let's be honest, a lot of you, especially women, are trying to raise emotionally healthy kids while still healing from the way that you were raised yourselves. And that is no small thing. In today's episode, we are talking about reparenting, boundaries, emotional safety, self advocacy, and even some astrology, because sometimes the healing conversation gets to be both grounded and a little bit magical. If you've ever looked successful on the outside, but felt stretched, triggered, over responsible, or quietly exhausted on the inside, this conversation is for you. Welcome to Mindset Medicine with Dr. Tanya Burfield, where science meets soul, burnout meets boundaries, and high achieving women finally stop performing and start healing. I am a resilience and transformation expert, nervous system strategist, and recovering overfunctioner just like you. This podcast is your sanctuary for breaking cycles, rewriting stories, and reclaiming your energy, your peace, and your power. Each week, we blend neuroscience, somatic practices, and spiritual truth to help you unlearn the noise and remember who you really are. You're not broken. You're breaking free. And this is your medicine. Welcome back to Mindset Medicine with Dr. Tanya Burfield. I am really excited, as I'm always very excited about our guests, but this one is right up my alley and very fascinating. And so I think this will be a great conversation. So with me today, I have Maria Riegger. She is an attorney, a speaker, and a parenting coach. She also talks a lot about astrology. So talk about pulling all of the most oddest combination of things together. I think this will be a fantastic conversation. So Maria, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thanks, Tanya, for having me today.
Yeah, you bet. So we've been talking on and off. So we've been on and off of calls. And so I've gotten some bits and pieces of information, and we've had some really fascinating and just exciting and invigorating conversations. So I'm excited to dig in here a little bit. So why don't we just start with, tell us, what is your story? Why are you? Let's just start with, who are you? What do you do?
Oh my gosh. So I'm a corporate and banking attorney. I have practiced family law and trust and estates. I still practice that pro bono for clients, and noticed that a lot of people need support. Parents need support post-divorce. That just the technical side of divorce was just the beginning of the process, that parents needed a lot of support with parenting as a single parent, whether you're co-parenting or parallel parenting, and then structuring a new household, especially single moms, how to structure finances, how to maintain boundaries with a co-parent while you're co-parenting, all that stuff. So I started to do parent coaching and then got my certification in reparenting. So I'm a reparenting coach certification, because in working with parents about how to have better boundaries with their kids, it was really hard to do that without helping the parents work on their own boundaries in general with
Yes.
everybody.
Yes.
Right? Really hard to teach your kids healthy boundaries if you don't have healthy boundaries yourself with everybody. So that's where the reparenting came in. So reparenting, for those who may not be familiar with it, because I
Mhm.
occasionally get asked, what is
I
reparenting?
was going to make you dig in. Perfect.
Yeah. So basically, the way I like to explain it, we have kids have developmental needs that ideally should be met for them to grow into a healthy, secure, emotionally intelligent adult. The gamut from, when they're babies, they need the attachment, the attunement. They need to know somebody is coming if I am in distress, right? All the way up to adolescence. They need to be able to test boundaries safely. They need curiosity encouragement, all these things, emotional validation. And when they don't get these developmental needs met, that leads to a whole host of issues in adulthood, like people pleasing or boundaries,
Mhm.
a codependency, all these things. So and I'm talking a lot about this recently. It is parents have a tougher time than ever because of social media, the internet. So many people have access to our kids that was not the case in
Scary.
the past.
Scary.
We're
Yep.
Gen Xers. I grew up in the woods. I mean, the 80s was the
Mhm.
best time to grow up, but it will never be like that
So
again. It
true.
will never
Yep.
be like that again. So really, it is not enough to be a securely attached parent and help your kid form a secure attachment with you. It's great. It's not enough. We have to teach our kids, I call it next level parenting. We have to teach our kids how to spot toxic behavior, how to advocate for themselves. You and I were just talking about this in our
Mhm.
last call, how to
Yep.
advocate for themselves so that they can, when they are adults, they will be able to advocate for themselves when the parents are not around to help them and guide them and tell them, hey, that's toxic behavior. You should not hang out with those people, right?
Mhm.
Now, like some teenagers may not listen to that anyway, but
At
but,
least not in the moment.
kids right, but kids, if they're not allowed to practice the boundary setting, the autonomy, if they're not allowed to say no respectfully to their parents, they don't magically get good at that later in adulthood. They
Right.
have to practice that at home with the parents, right? And it's not to say that you let your kids do whatever they want, but they can at least respectfully self-advocate, and then maybe you can
Mhm.
have a conversation about, "Well,
Mhm.
tell me more about that. Why is your answer no? Help me understand what's going on here," right? So my mission here is to help parents with all of this. Yeah. So then most of the parents I work with are single parents and they are almost exclusively recovering from complex trauma like I am. They either had abusive parents or they unfortunately were in abusive relationships or had relational trauma, not always physical abuse. It could be I'm talking a lot recently about coercive control. In fact, I'm doing a webinar on that in a couple weeks, all about coercive control, which is controlling behavior. So all that is relational trauma. And parents who are recovering from that while simultaneously learning to be good parents and prepare their kids for adulthood, that is a very
Mhm.
tough ask.
Mhm.
So, yeah, that's what I do. And you mentioned astrology. I want to put that out there. My clientele are largely spiritually conscious parents. And I have been into astrology my whole life, pretty much. My mother used to have Linda Goodman sun sign books. I used to read those as a little kid. And then I know, way reaching way back. And then as an adult, I studied astrology seriously because I was interested in energy patterns. It's one of the things that attorneys were trained to spot patterns, right? So I noticed that there were very similar energy patterns, for example, with certain energies or certain transits, certain things in the chart that I determined that studying astrology can be very helpful from a personal development point of view, but
Mhm.
also I do a lot of readings and coaching for parents and kids. Their chart synastry, for example, can really inform the relationship and help improve the relationship. And all serious astrologers I know are data driven. Many of them are clinical therapists. Some of them have hard science backgrounds and they have done studies and the studies so their conclusions are backed up by this data. For example, you and I talked last hour that there are these huge transits happening this year. Saturn conjunct Neptune at 0 degrees Aries, huge transit, kind of a resetting, a rebooting for many of us. And the serious astrologers I know have done historical research on the events taking place during certain important transits like this. Uranus is transiting in Gemini, for example, it's going to be in Gemini later this year. That's huge for technological advancement. Well, astrologer Chris Brennan looked at what was happening in past historical periods when Uranus was transiting in the sign of Gemini. Well, we had all this, we had all this, we have these advancements. So you can see the historical patterns. It's very interesting. So
Mhm.
to me, um, a lot of my parent coaching started with incorporating the astrology, and there's a lot of parents who wanted to know more about their kids' chart, how they could be a better parent because if they're recovering from complex trauma and they did not have good parenting models, they're looking to, for example, astrology to inform their children's chart and energy. It can inform, for example, how your kid learns, how they
Mhm.
communicate, what they need to recharge their energy, things like that. So,
Mhm.
very interesting stuff. And I am constantly amazed by how much it resonates with clients.
I will say it does with me as well, and I think I said to you, I know enough to be dangerous, not enough to actually speak like I have any kind of intellect behind it. And I have a question, but I have a point before that. One of the very first business coaches that I ever worked with had an astrology background. She actually had a very successful business there first and then morphed it into like a consulting sort of business. And I had to share like all of my information with her ahead before she would even take a 15-minute call with me. And when we got on the call, she pulled a little bit of information from me, but she said, I took your call because of your chart. Like you are, because I'm an Aries and because of where my house set. And she said things that I didn't understand at the time. She's like, because of that, you will be a successful entrepreneur and you have what it takes to be able to do the things and you have the fire and the drive to be able to do it. Therefore, I'm willing to work with you. We'll go into the next call. It wasn't even like we're done there. It was like, you could go, you're now invited to the next call. So I was like, what is happening right now? And like, she's building a business around this. And
Yeah.
also then it meant something to me because she knew me. She knew me. She saw me. I still have notes that every once in a while I
Mhm.
pull out to be like, she said that about me. And she was so like, it was so spot on. It was just absolutely ridiculous. But all of that to say, I think that you are 100% right there were 2 points there that I wanna sort of delve into. One was your kids' charts, but before we even get back to that, the reparenting piece,
Mhm.
we all like, we have a desire to be good parents, right? Like, if you're doing the thing and you made this decision, then you wanna be a good parent, but you have your own life experiences that are maybe stopping you from not being as successful or as productive as you would hope to be at all times. And so I think that you can look back at some experiences that you had in your own lifetime and sometimes we need to reparent those, right? Like we had experiences, we had hurts, we had traumas, we had whatever you want to call them. They landed in us, they landed in our body, they landed in our psyche. And so now we have to figure out how do we not do that? There are times that I hear there's a person in my life, I'm not going to say it because she might listen to this, but I hear her voice. When I'm yelling
Yeah.
at my kids, I hear her voice and I
Mhm.
hate that.
Mhm.
Do not like, as soon as I hear it, I'm like, "No, no, no, bring it back, bring it back. That's not who we're gonna be right now." And so I like there's one memory in particular that I have tried to reparent this one experience a number of times, and I've not yet been successful. I will be at some point. But I overheard, it was one of my relatives, I overheard her saying some things about me that were really not nice. And I was like 3rd or 4th grade, and they just were awful. And they landed in me, and I believed that about myself for a very long time. And so I think that we have to take some of those experiences and figure out how do we release that. And so I think that reparenting is a really great way to do that. And so as you're working with your clients, is that something that you are sort of addressing or digging into or helping them navigate? Yeah. Do you have
Yes.
a
So
go ahead.
usually what happens is clients will I was just gonna say, usually,
Mhm.
clients will seek out, like, my services that we do the reparenting protocols when they have noticed these patterns in their lives, and they're usually most apparent in relationships, either parent-child or romantic relationships with their partners, patterns of self-sabotage in relationships, patterns of emotional dysregulation, like, "Why am I so triggered by my kid's
Mhm.
developmentally appropriate behavior?" That's a big one. Things like that, like professional self-sabotage, so they'll see these repeating patterns, and most of the clients have some insight into, "Well, my father said this, so this is why I am driven to overachieve because they never gave me whatever they never, I never got the affirmations and emotional validations," or which was my case, I was taught that your worth is tied to your academic success and your professional success. That's your worth is tied to that.
Yes.
So that encourages the client to overachieve because they think that they're not worthy unless they are having academic success or having professional success or making X
Or
amount of money,
athletic.
right?
Yeah,
Or
athletic
athletic
success is
success,
another
all
one.
these
Yeah.
things, right? All these things. And that's, as we talked about last hour, that leads to burnout. So clients usually have the insight as to why they are engaging in this behavior that at one time served them, right? But it's not serving them now. And but they want to change the behavior. They're having a hard time not acting from those patterns. So yeah.
I think that's so good. And I think too, like that sense of safety that you sort of I think you said at one point and then alluded to, when your kids have that sense of safety and they feel comfortable enough to push the boundaries, number one, they want those boundaries. They want to understand what that box is and where is too
Hmm.
far. And they want to know that if they go too far, that they have a safe place to come back to. Like that's really important, I think, in their
Absolutely.
development. So
Yeah.
there's oh, I know the other thing was the chart, and so this fascinates me because I mentioned to you in the last hour, like with the 3 boys, I know what I am. I'm an Aries, and I'm fiery, and I'm hot-headed, and I'm in charge, and I'm controlling, and I'm all the things. I totally get that about myself, and I know with Trey, who's my youngest, so I am an Aries, but pushing into the Taurus. He is a straight up Taurus, that child, and then I can
Hmm.
talk about Cullen as a Cancer and Nash as a Libra, which his dad is as well. And so you can just see how that develops in their personality and then how they approach
Mhm.
life. So I'm really interested in how you teach parents how to use that in parenting their children.
Absolutely. So you have to be careful. You always have to be careful when
Mhm.
you're reading charts for children because
Mhm.
clearly they haven't lived out their natal promise yet. That's what I like to call
Right.
it. So to use that phrase that astrologer Michael Bryant uses, natal. I love that way to describe the chart is the natal promise. Okay, because
Mm.
we have free will
Mhm.
to act on the energy in our chart.
Yep.
So, we go, it depends what the parent is looking for. A lot of the times they want to know, how can I support my child? Or the what very happens very frequently is kids get into like middle school and now they're being very oppositional and we used to have this great relationship and now things are very tense. So what is happening? Like, how can I fix this? Right. So I will guide the parent through, the session and we will talk about what, their sun sign is this, but their moon sign is very different. And they need this, like, to feel nurtured and validated and seen, they need this. Or a lot of times, especially moms will ask, well, they're not talking to me. I want them to talk to me. Yes, but they're not going to talk to you if they're pressured to talk to you, especially if like you have a Scorpio kid, which I do. They
Mhm.
will talk when they are ready. They will not talk
Not before.
if you are pressuring them to talk.
Yep.
Okay? So things like that. So it's if you tell them this is the nature of this energy, try this. And a lot of the times they'll have
Mhm.
more success with, for example, instead of, pressuring them to talk, just get used to being in the same space together.
Mhm.
Because kids, like to your point, kids need
Mhm.
the structure and kids need to know the parent is there. That's all. Sometimes it's you don't even need to be doing anything together. Your
Yep.
presence, your calm presence is what they need for that attachment to feel safe.
Yes.
Like mom is
Yep.
there, mom is home. And to your point too, Tanya, about the boundary testing, yes, kids need structure and that structure is comforting. It's a little counterintuitive. It's like, why are they pushing me on the structure and the boundaries if they want structure? Well, because they
And
want to know where the structure
frustrating.
is.
Right.
Yeah, they
Yep.
wanna know where the boundaries are, they wanna know what the structure is, and that's always a trick with parenting is providing the structure and supporting them in the autonomy
Yeah.
which is
Yep.
developmentally appropriate. Yeah.
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 That reminded me of a situation with one of the boys. They, like, went through this terrible breakup in high school. It was like DEFCON 5. That child was going through it, and he didn't wanna talk about it. He didn't want any advice, he didn't wanna talk about it, but he needed me, and he needed me to be there, and so we sat on the couch and just sat there together.
Right.
There were times that he would call me and just be very like, he would call me crying, and I there were a couple of times I pulled into work and, like, parked and got his call and texted my boss, like, "I was here, but I gotta go. I'll be in touch." And he was very understanding of the situation, and also we're in higher ed, we're very aware of mental health with kids right now, and so, he was perfectly fine with me needing to go and do this thing. But he would wait for me, and then he would walk in the house with me. He wouldn't even come in until I got there, and then we would just sit on the couch, and we would just sit beside each other. And that was it. We're
Yeah.
not talking about anything. He
Yeah.
doesn't know how to talk about
Yeah.
this right now. He's very
Right.
hurt, and that's all he knows.
Right.
And it wasn't until, like, there were some, like, because we talked about the world they're living in, there were some social media things that we needed to address that were happening around it, but outside of that, it was just, "Let me be comfortable right now." And then I think too, it's important to understand that, but not let it define them, right? Because they haven't fulfilled what you were talking about, but then also
Mhm.
it's important to let them discover and understand who they are without and let their experiences sort of formulate that, but not create this is the box you live in, this is who you are, therefore this is how we'll do everything. So I think that's important too.
Exactly. That's the thing. So that's why I don't like to be predictive
Mhm.
because parents will I get a question, for example, I get this question all the time. Well, my kid has a Capricorn moon, and I read that that means they'll have a very tough relationship with the mom. Okay, well,
Yeah, maybe. Don't all
maybe,
teenagers?
yeah, really. But chances are, if you're doing the parenting work and you're already open-minded to learning
Mhm.
about how to improve as a parent, chances are you'll have a pretty good relationship, right? So
Mhm.
if you talk about manifesting, if you think we're going to have a tough relationship, guess what? You're probably going to have a tough relationship.
Mhm.
So if that's all what you're
Yep.
drawing,
You
that's
put
what
it
you're
out there.
concentrating on, that's
Mhm.
what you're bringing into
Yep.
consciousness. So you want to be very
You
careful
put it
about
out
that. But
there.
yeah, But yeah, like, for example, and, we talk about sun signs, but the chart, clearly, it's more than just a sun sign. A sun sign is very important, especially when looking at your kid's chart, because it informs the purpose. And again, without, being too predictive, for example, you may ask your kid you may drive them toward things, or ask them about things, or encourage them to pursue activities that may resonate more with them, right? So, somebody who has a lot of water in their chart may want to be in a profession that is they are helping people because they have a lot of empathy toward people. So, asking them questions, offering them the possibility of doing certain activities or volunteering, for example, they may benefit from that. They may find that
Mm,
very fulfilling. So, it's kind of knowing that about the intrinsic nature and being able to support them, and instead of pushing them a certain way or telling them, this is how you are. It's about
right.
encouraging and support, right?
Yeah.
Encouragement and support. Yeah,
Right, and also
for sure.
experimentation. Just because they
Yeah,
like one thing doesn't mean we need to stick with this one thing for the rest of their
absolutely.
lives. Like, we don't know what we
Yeah,
don't know. I think that was my favorite thing about raising the boys was, like, just opening the door for, like, to different opportunities and experiences and adventures so that you don't know who you are. Like,
right.
you can't tell me this is what you're gonna do and this is how you wanna spend your life. You have
Yeah,
not experienced so much of this world, and you know
yeah,
what we do and what your dad does and what your
right,
grandparents and your
right,
aunts and uncles do. Like, there's so much more out there. You need to go figure it out. And so I
right.
loved that part of being a parent. And I think too, I wasn't sure I was going to talk about this, but we're both boy moms, and I did not recognize until the last one left the house how much of my identity was being a boy mom. And like I mean, we were all doing the things. I'm very independent. I've got lots of things going on outside of being a mom, but it wasn't until the last one moved out, because the first one moved out, I still have two to focus
Yeah,
on. The second one moved out, I
sure.
still have this one. And then the last one, he didn't just move out. He went in the military and was cut off from me for 6 months. Like, we got a 10-minute phone call once a week, and I didn't realize how hard that was going to be for me, because the other ones are, they're out doing their own things. They're with their partners and living their life,
Yeah.
living their best lives. They're having a great time. But I didn't realize, like, I loved being a mom to these boys, and just like we were hanging out and we were having adventures and we were doing all of these cool things. And it wasn't until it was gone that I was like, shit, this sucks.
It's
And
tough, nobody
yeah,
prepares you for that. There's
no,
a grieving process, and I'm not
yes,
quite there yet because my son's still in high school, but
right.
he's at his dad's every other week,
Mm,
so I get a
hmm.
taste
You
of
get a
that,
taste of it. Yeah.
and I can
Yep.
already kind of grieving this idea of, wow, in a couple of years, he's gonna
Hmm.
be moving out, he's gonna be going to
Yeah.
college or whatever, and that's gonna be really hard, and I
Hmm.
mean, nobody prepared me for that.
Yeah, I
Yeah,
wasn't
for
even
anticipating
having,
that.
yeah, and even like I said, having gone through it twice, the
Yeah,
3rd time, and I think because, like, the first 2, they're doing their thing and we're involved with them, but they're living their lives, they're with their partners, they have different mindsets now because 'cause they've had different experiences, and that's all well and good. And then I think because when Trey left, it was like, we'll get a phone call when we get a phone call, and he doesn't have a say in that. And that was hard for me then to navigate all that. Like, I wasn't ready and I didn't like it. And I'm still a little bit like, oh,
yeah,
this
yeah,
isn't,
it's
it's
tough.
none of my terms anymore. I don't like it.
Yeah, yeah,
I
yeah.
say that knowing, and I mentioned this to you, that like while we've been on the call, I hear that there are some people downstairs. So they're at least visiting me still once in a while.
It's good, that's
So,
good.
one of the things I also am really curious about, this is just about you personally. So, I have heard you talk about two different things that make zero sense how they come together. So, when you talk about, achievement was important, academics were important, achievement was important. That's one really solid line that we are pushed down. But then you're talking about these astrology books that you're reading as a child. How in the world did this come together and manifest for you in such a way that's so successful?
It's so funny. I mean, in many ways, I'm your typical Gemini. In many ways, I'm not, because I'm like a rugged individualist, and I like to isolate myself in my house. I'm a big introvert, which you don't really associate that with Gemini, because it's an energy that compels the chart holder to communicate, and that is certainly true for me. But I always loved learning, and I had an
Mhm.
insatiable curiosity, still do.
Mhm.
And I'm constantly learning stuff, constantly reading stuff, using
Mhm.
ChatGPT, all like it's just like, yeah, it's like so and of course we had limited sources of entertainment in the 80s growing up. We had like 2 or 3 channels.
Mhm.
And, any books laying around, I ended up reading because
Mhm.
if I was bored, right?
Yep.
So, but yeah, so it was funny because when I kind of started my spiritual practice, like meditating and all these things after my first divorce, and this is when I started my reparenting process
Mm.
too. When I became a parent, when my son was very young, and I realized, wow, I really need to work on this. I looked toward some spiritual practices, and I have a very good friend who has been an astrologer for like 20, 30 years, and that's why I started to study astrology seriously. And that's when yeah, made the conclusion that this stuff really does help and it makes sense.
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
when I look at the rest of my chart, I think, oh, now everything makes sense. Because
Right.
I get that all the time from people. Well, I don't identify with my sun sign. Well, let's look at your chart. Well, how about this? Oh, yeah, that's me. I'm like, well, because maybe your
Mm.
Venus placement and your moon placement are different, right? And so
Yep.
you have these other things. So yes, your sun energy comes in here, but we have
Mhm.
all this other stuff going on.
Mhm.
So I get that all the
Yeah.
time. Yeah.
I also think too, because I talk about a dash of hippie woo. It's just enough to like pique your curiosity and maybe come in a little bit on this. But you are right. There is so much behind this that is scientific or data driven or based on patterns or there's something more to it, right? Like
Hmm.
one of my favorite sayings or mottos is your vibe attracts your tribe. Isn't it the same thing, right? It's about energy.
Yeah.
It's about what you put out into the
Yep.
universe. It's about manifestation. It's karma. It's a universal law. It's all of those things. Whatever you put out there is what you are going to get in return, probably doubled, so you should be nice.
Yeah.
What I have to say
Exactly.
about that.
Exactly.
Yeah, I think that's super interesting. And then there's one other piece that I picked up that I wanna talk about because this also, like, where did this come from and why is this a thing that we're talking about? You talk about building wealth. And
Hmm.
you've got a course, I think, by the
Hmm.
time this comes out, it will have already launched,
Yes.
but, like, I signed up for it because I was like, "What's this about? What's happening right here?"
Yeah. So, so much of my work is about boundary setting. That's what I
Mhm.
did. I did a TEDx talk last year on how
Nice.
to help your teenager have healthy boundaries, and it's surprisingly counterintuitive for parents. So, a lot of my work is boundary work, and I have courses on boundaries for parents, and my intensive specifically addresses financial boundaries with parents. So, without getting too much into it, using too much time, um, first of all, I love money and I love personal finance and investing. And I find that most women I talk to are not comfortable with that
We are
topic
not.
for
That
some
is
reason.
correct. Yep.
And I posted some content on having financial boundaries with your kids, and here's some scripting you can say. Not this is what to say instead of we can't afford it, which
Mhm.
creates a sense of
Mhm.
lack. Let's
Mhm.
use scripting that promotes abundance and comes from a place of autonomy, but also protects the parents' financial boundaries. Because it is easier than ever to spend money, and our children are constantly being marketed to. And these companies take advantage of the lack of impulse control of teenagers, right? And the fact that they're available all the time on the phone,
Mhm.
right?
Mhm.
So what I am observing is that parents are drowning, financially drowning, and they're
Mhm.
spent many of them, right? Not
Yeah.
100%, but many of them.
Mhm.
And they don't know what they're spending money on half the time, and they don't have a lot of them don't have good financial boundaries with the kids. And how do they do that? So that's a lot of the work that I'm doing currently. So this is a very personal topic to me. Ever since I was a kid, I have prioritized saving and building wealth, and I know that's crazy. My
I love
mother
it.
and brother used to borrow money from me when I was in middle school because I always had money. And I'm not even joking. I'm not even joking. My brother tells me he came home. He's a professional musician and he used to gig even in high school. And he tells a story about coming home one day and from this being out this gig all day. And the first thing I said to him was, "Do you have that $50 you owe me?" I'm like, well, I told
But
him
one
the
of them,
same thing I tell my son. If you
yep.
don't want to do the work, if you don't want to pay me back, don't borrow money from me.
Exactly. It
Sorry.
makes so much sense, though,
Anyway,
when you're talking about where
yeah,
parents are at, and I think that probably comes
yeah,
from all of the things we were talking about, not just boundaries, but, like, the emotions and the reparenting and all of the things, because we have this sense of guilt, and we need to do it better than our parents did it for us, and the
absolutely.
martyrdom that we were talking about earlier
Yep,
tonight, like, there's so much associated with that and how we have to just provide for these little beings that are not then going to be able to provide for themselves because we've done all of that for them. And so I think it's so important. And you're saying all of the right words, right? Like this is not about lack, it is about abundance. And we have to figure out
correct.
how to
Yep,
do this the right way. And the fact
right,
that you have a love for money means that you will do it well versus like that feeling of like, oh no, I can't afford it. Or, oh, I
right.
don't have that. Or I can't do this. Like it's a mindset. It's all a mindset.
Absolutely, and it's very personal to me because my father died in a car accident when I was 11, and my mother was a
Mm,
stay-at-home mom, and we had money trouble. She had to go back to work, and
sure.
she was always struggling. And I promised myself, I'm like, "I will always be independent. I will always have my own money. I will never
Hmm.
be like a stay-at-home spouse," even though there's nothing wrong with that, but it was not for
Right.
me. I always prioritize my financial independence. And one of the reasons I'm doing this, I have this wealth rebuild workbook, and I'm doing this workshop later this week, which the replay is also available if you sign up for it, is because I'm divorced twice, and I'm very fortunate because even though my dogs are
It's
barking, I don't
fine.
know why.
It's
Even though my always barking about something.
yeah.
Even though after my first divorce, my household income was cut in half, but my net worth skyrocketed because I alone was in charge of my
Mm,
finances. My second
mhm.
divorce cost me 5 figures, and I made many mistakes, but I put financial structures in place and financial boundaries with my partner that allowed me to build a very good investment portfolio. Currently, my day job is optional, and to be able to say that is to me
Right.
very meaningful. Even my
Yeah.
point is, you can make all these mistakes, these relationship mistakes. You can make them and still build wealth. It's not about the income you're bringing in, although income helps, right? More income helps. It's not about necessarily the money you make. It's about the structures you put in place. Because we all know people who make incredible salaries but spend to their income, and that's what
Right.
I see
Or over.
happening a lot.
Mhm.
Yeah,
Mhm.
and in fact, there was just a Pew Research study that just came out that said that actually kind of so-called middle income parents or middle income parents actually enjoyed parenting more than higher income parents. Why is that? That'd be very
Mm.
interesting to study why that is. Is it because of all the reasons you mentioned, Tanya, that
Yep.
they feel pressure to spend, 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 and give their kids all this stuff?
Mhm.
Or they feel pressured to keep up with the Joneses? Like,
That's
what
exactly what I was gonna
you know what I
say.
mean?
Yep.
Like, is that what is going on? 'Cause, I mean, I live in a hyper competitive area, so I can understand that. But that was very interesting. You don't have to make a whole lot of money to build wealth.
Mhm.
Yes, more income helps,
Sure.
but, you can still enjoy parenting and have a happy, fulfilling life and put structures in place, and you can still build wealth is my point. So,
Yep.
yeah, that's what we're gonna
That
talk about
makes
later this week. Very,
yeah.
very, very excited about it. Yeah.
I love that. I love it so much. Like I said, I signed up because when I was looking at your information, I was like, that's fascinating, and I just have to understand what you've got going on there. So I love that.
Yeah. And
Awesome.
if any listeners who are into astrology, I mean, I have a
Mhm.
Capricorn moon, so that's kind of Capricorn is like that's a sign of material abundance. So we like material stuff and we like money and we like security. So that's yeah, I
Nice.
always wanted to make sure I had enough wealth to have that security.
Yep. This has been an awesome conversation. There are about 5 points I'd like to dig into further, but for the sake of time, we're not gonna do that tonight, maybe another time. But in the meantime, where can people find you? What do you wanna make sure that they know about you or all of that stuff? I'll just let you
Absolutely.
have it because I know you know how to do that.
Thanks, Tanya. My main website is lawschoolheretic.com. That's where I blog. My YouTube channel is Positive Parenting with Astrology with Maria Riegger. And my community on school is The Parent's Edge. And you can email me directly at maria@lawschoolheretic.com. And I'm happy to send booking information if anybody's interested in talking to me one on one.
Fantastic. I will make sure all of the links are in the show notes, so feel free to go and grab those there. Maria, thank you so much. This was such a fantastic conversation. I loved it so much. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks, Tanya, for having me. Great conversation. Thank you.
This was such a rich conversation because it really gets at something that I know so many of you are living every single day. You can love your kids deeply. You can want to do it differently. You can be smart and capable and successful and self aware and still find yourself getting triggered or overgiving or overfunctioning or reacting from wounds that are older than the moment in front of you. That does not mean that you are failing, my friend. It means that there is more healing available. And I think that's what I loved most about this conversation with Maria. We talked about parenting, yes, but we also talked about identity and nervous system safety, boundaries, self trust, and what it looks like to stop repeating patterns that were never really yours to carry in the first place. So, if this episode hit home for you, first of all, make sure that you connect with Maria. All of her information is in the show notes. And second, stay close because I have something really exciting coming up. I'll be sharing more soon about an upcoming challenge that I have for people that are tired of performing, pushing, and holding it all together at the expense of yourself. It's going to be a powerful space to start recognizing the patterns, shifting the pressure, and creating real internal change, not just more stuff to do, because God knows that none of us needs another color coded burden. And then, if you're listening to this and thinking, my team needs this conversation, my organization needs this kind of message around burnout, boundaries, emotional well being, and authentic leadership, that work is very much a part of what I do. I speak to groups, teams, and organizations on these exact topics. I would love to bring this kind of conversation into your space. Until next time, take a breath, give yourself some grace, and remember, healing does not require perfection. It requires honesty, safety, and the willingness to do things differently. I love you.